Hey there, it's Rod Wilson with the Optimized Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for joining. I have a special treat for you today. I'm actually interviewing Andy Pollock, the CEO of Anchor Loans. We get into various topics. He shares a little bit about his background, the reason for coming to Anchor. Talks a little bit about the relationship with Pretium, who acquired Anchor last fall in November, and you'll want to stay to the very end because he also shares his insights on kind of where he thinks this market's going and what you can do to kind of properly navigate things going forward as we're kind of entering these pretty volatile and in some cases challenging times. Okay, let's just jump into it. I am on today with Andy Pollock, CEO of Anchor Loans. Andy, thanks for joining.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought we'd just kind of dive in. I know you're busy. Actually, the one preface I was going to make is I appreciate you jumping on the call. I know you got a lot going on, but we had met with that one client in Brentwood, and you were talking to them about a pretty big project and just talking about your background, a little bit about Anchor, obviously, but then also our relationship with Pretium. So those are kind of the topics I would like to cover and be able to share to, kind of a broader audience, our clients, as well as, the prospects out there. So anyway, thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited to be here, Rod, and participate in today's activities and Q&A session and the overall podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I guess the first thing is maybe just start with background. If you want to share a little bit about, your story.
Yeah. I always joke when we get on various calls or meetings or forums to discuss my background. I always think I'm, the 18-year-old kid on the call, and I'm almost 60, and I did the math just now on a piece of paper. I've been in this industry for 36 years, which I remember when I joined the industry, there were guys that were in their 60s. I looked at them like a bunch of has-beens, and I go, no, that's me, which again, I don't feel like that. I feel like I'm still the new guy in town. But anyways, yeah, I started in 1986 with a small mortgage banking firm called First Franklin, and it was in San Jose, California. I think there was 25 or 30 of us bumping heads doing retail mortgage originations. And in 1986, we were refining people from their 18% interest rate loans into 15%, and to think that you could even do a loan at that rate, it was just it was unheard of. And then at one point, rates ticked down to like 9%. We thought we died and gone to heaven. Then to see rates at some point, in recent times, get down into high twos, you're just like, how can that be? But I think we've seen it all. Everything from the S&L crisis with FIREA. We think about the dot-com bomb. We think about the 9/11 post 9/11 crisis. Then of course the infamous crisis that commenced in 2007, et cetera. But it's for me it's painful, but it's a pain that I enjoy, and it's a pain I know. But through that process of being a long-term mortgage banker, of understanding the aspects of my career, which began at First Franklin and ended up being close to a 20-year career path, and also diversifying and going into consulting for mortgage bankers. And then ultimately I went to work for a firm called First California Mortgage, which was a turnaround situation. Then I went on to work for the private equity firm of the Texas Pacific Group, TPG. And with them, once again, was involved with acquiring a mortgage company. At the time, it was called Icon Residential. Acquiring that firm, turning it around, and integrating it into the broader spectrum of Rushmore Home Loans was exciting times. And then from there, my career, I went into work for Radian, the insurance company. But within Radian, I worked mainly with their risk mitigation tools and due diligence tools for securitizations, and spent most of my time working with investment banks, fund managers, REITs, really the investor side of the lending industry, which I'll tell you, Rod, that's really was helpful for me, because I always knew that at some point I was going to get back into lending, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be providing financing through pawn shops on the far left, or the far right, getting back into consumer lending. And from in there, was it going to be retail, wholesale, or correspondent? Wasn't sure. But as I spent more and more time with a number of my clients, they were buying the business purpose residential mortgages, and they were securitizing them. They were putting them in other type of investment vehicles, and inevitably through that process at Radian, got to dive deeper and deeper into fix and flip, fix and hold, the infill ground up construction, the single family, multifamily rental, and I decided that if and when I was going to get back into lending, that would be the arena I would want to play in. And
that's an interesting decision based on what's happened the last few months.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I think we're both kind of in that same boat of ending up in this space. And I don't think anyone. I mean, I think we all knew that at some point the music was going to slow down, and it has. But man, conventional mortgage space is pretty tough.
Yeah, no, and when I was evaluating getting back into lending, I got a gut ache thinking about consumer mortgages, just because we used to joke about it. We used to call it the roller coaster of love. As rates went up, you're like, oh, now what? Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the top of it, it starts going down, like, woohoo, you're having fun. And then it bottoms out, and then tick, 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 tick. And it was just like going, it's when it was booming, you were like, it's going to bottom out. And then when it peaks, and then when it bottomed out, it was tough because you were a lot of layoffs. A lot of people you had been working with for years saying goodbye to, and some instances when it bottoms out like that, it also bottoms out and gets cratered, and we would see companies close their doors, and that was never very much fun.
Right. What kind of drew you to Anchor? I guess getting into your role here at Anchor, and I know it has transitioned, but what was kind of the original draw? Would you see in Anchor versus everybody else?
Yeah, I knew who all the players were in the sector, and so knowing that I wanted to get into the business purpose residential, I wanted to try and find an established entity, a firm that had built infrastructure, a firm that had efficacy and tenure. And there were only a handful of firms that you could really point to that had been doing this for a while, and Anchor was the one was the oldest. The firm is 23 years old. It was a firm that had been through a number of different credit cycles, a number of different interest rate environments, a number of different HUD secretaries, and had been able to navigate through those different markets and survive. So from my standpoint, that was a firm that had a great foundation, a great framework, and an overall wherewithal, and the ability to pivot when the market changed. And that's why I sought out Anchor, and I did it. I'll call it the new school way. Even though I'm the old school guy, I reached out to the CEO at the time, and through LinkedIn, and connected with him, and developed some communications through LinkedIn. And at the time, I was still at Radian. He thought I was trying to sell him Radian products, and I was trying to find a job, good old fashioned job. And through that process, got to get on campus, got to interview with the executive team, and got to be able to move it forward.
Just consummate sales guy. You closed them.
Yeah, we liked each other. It went both ways. And Steve was, he's the founder, co-founder of the company, and it was approaching on 20 years of doing this. And he had said to me, "Hey, listen, I'm planning on retiring in 2.5 years, and if you perform as you have professed you can, then you're the heir apparent." And then 6 months into it, he's like, "Yeah, you're the right guy. I'm going to retire." And at which point in time he did. So he retired a year and a half ago.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you talking about, once you came in looking at, potential acquisition targets. And I think it's just interesting how that kind of flipped when, looked at acquiring a couple companies, and then you kind of flipped it. And instead of acquire or, we became acquiree, And then, so maybe just lead into kind of the whole Pretium relationship, what that kind of does for us, what you like about, and by the way, I guess I should probably start this with, and you can dive in a little deeper as far as what Pretium's about, but acquired what in October or November of last year?
Yeah, November 1st. Yeah.
Yeah, November 1st, we're acquired by Pretium, who's $40 billion real estate asset management company. And so yeah, maybe share some kind of insights on, why that was such a good fit and target, and what benefits and value that Pretium brings to the table for our customer base.
Yeah, it was probably a year and a half ago. The parent company of Anchor, which was a private equity firm of Wafra Capital, got excited about turbocharging Anchor, and we discussed how best to turbocharge the organization. And we had gone down a path of looking at acquiring a complementary entity, competitor of ours. We started negotiations with one of our larger competitors about acquiring them and merging them into Anchor, and spent some quality time on that. And knowing that behind the scenes there were other bidders in play, and we got outbid, so we lost that. Which, oh well, those things happen. And then we went after another targeted competitor. Same thing. We went through the bidding process, and once again we got outbid. And Wafra said to me, he goes, we keep getting outbid. I go, well, the standard school of thought is if you can't acquire somebody because you're getting outbid, you shouldn't be a buyer, you should be a seller. And we moved forward and put together a book and shopped it. And we knew who all the other bidders were for the other competitors that we were going after. So we already knew that the dance card looked like. And so we went back to those 10 or 12 people and said, we're open for bids for the sale of the company, and worked through that process, and ultimately procured the acquisition through Pretium Partners. And it's been like 9 months now under their ownership. And it's been exciting simply because they are residential real estate finance centric. They have several operating companies. They own a non-QM wholesale mortgage company called Deep Haven. They own the largest institutional landlord in the nation under Progress Residential. And they own a very large consumer-based mortgage servicing company called Selene Finance. And of course, they have now Anchor Loans. And through those operating companies, they generate assets for the various funds that Pretium either owns individually or is joint venture with other institutions. And they're also active in buying distressed assets, both non-performing REO properties, reperforming portfolios from that context. And just was a nice compliment from that standpoint. And so where our parent company may have been a private equity firm or a venture capital firm, we're owned by a financial services entity with other operating companies that are all solely centric on residential real estate, which is helpful.
Yeah, I let people know this just because I think it's important to, and I didn't really, to be honest, put much thought behind this going in, but just having that kind of backing behind us, especially given what's happened. And this is July 29th, 2022. So, the last couple of months have been pretty rough, 2-3 months in the interest rate environment. And it was great. Not only are we number one, we haven't missed a beat. We continue to lend, which, we've seen a lot of our competitors just either go out of business or stop lending. And then, as we talked about earlier today, a lot of the lenders, instead of telling the market that they're not lending, they just, jack rates or reduce leverage. And we've seen a lot of that. And so, and this goes back to, I think, your tenure in the industry, and obviously the management, both within Anchor and Pretium. I mean, being seasoned folks, I mean, they've, kind of seen these cycles before. So it's not like an overreaction to what's happening in the market. We've been able to keep going. So that's the obvious thing in my mind as far as what Pretium brings to the table. We don't make knee-jerk reactions and kind of negatively affect our borrowers and clients. What other I guess, positive benefits from the client side, would you say, having such a big parent company?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. Being backed by the full faith and credit of Pretium, a $40 billion entity that has assets under management at that level, gives us the staying power to move forward even in a market like this that's very volatile, and very challenging, a lot of uncertainty. We're committed to this sector, and we'll hold true to that. We're proud of ourselves from that standpoint. Our pipeline is slowly funneling through, and we've stuck behind every commitment we've had on rate and on points and leverage and funded the deals. Even though we've been raising coupons on new originations just because the market requires that, we're seeing a lot of our friendly competitors retrade their deals and or just completely cancel the deals and or it would appear in some instances for going volume simply because they don't have any capacity, because they have constraints from their financing, because the market has gotten tighter and are very challenged. We're proud of our ability to continue to meet our obligations, meet our commitments, because when we get to the other side of this, we're confident that our clients will have a long-term memory of our ability to follow through and meet our obligations.
No, absolutely. I think that is key. So I guess another question that comes to mind, Andy, is just what, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here. I know I didn't give you these questions prior, but what either strategies or things that Anchor has put in place to kind of, ensure the success of our borrowers? I mean, I know, we have obviously our lending guidelines and whatnot, and the whole point is, to make it us successful and profitable as well as, the customers, even though we send, I tend to have that conversation a lot. It's like, they want 100% leverage. And I'm like, is that really what you want to be doing? Or they, they're pushing for various things outside of what kind of the lending guidelines would be. So what would you say are kind of the top things? I guess what I'm getting at is, why Anchor? Why do you think, we're a good fit? And this would be more for, our clients kind of get it, but for new borrowers that are coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it's our value proposition. We compete on price. On any given day of the week, oftentimes we do have some competitors that will outprice us. But they kind of come into the market, come out of the market, they get in between the market, where we work diligently to be consistent on our pricing, so that way it's not too topsy-turvy and raining around all over the place. It's products. We're not all things to all people. We like the fix and flip. We like the ground up construction, and we like the single family rental. But that's our trifecta. That's what we do best, and we stick to it. We stick to our knitting in that context. The process, it's 23 years of doing this. Not that every day we're finding ways to enhance our process, but we're trying to make the complex very simple, ensuring that our processing team is there as an extension of our sales force to ensure that we can take a loan from submission to fund at the speed of the client. In sales, we work diligently on our sales team. We think we have the best sales force in the nation, in particular in the sector. And it's service, turnaround time, and knowing that it's when we receive a phone call and we get the application, it's a race from submission to fund, and we work diligently on that too. So I can't really point to one particular thing. It's price, it's product, it's process, it's sales, it's service, and last but not least, it's the people. We try and hire the best, retain the best, and promote the best, and are the most knowledgeable. So that way, when there's an issue at hand that a client has, they have their subject matter expert at their disposal.
So I think my listeners and followers would shoot me if I don't ask the next couple questions. Which one is, where do you think this market's going? And well, it's twofold. I'll save the second one. Where do you think we're going from a just general market perspective? I know it's real estate, so it's localized, and you can't make too many broad claims. But what are your kind of general thoughts, given we've had a bit of an adjustment in most markets?
Yeah, I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Worse as far as I think we're going to see coupons continue to creep up. The FOMC met earlier this week and raised 75 basis points, which is not necessarily a direct reflection on where rates will go to our borrowers, because even though the Fed moved this week, we did not, and we're not planning on it. There's no plans, in the immediate future of raising rates until further notice. It can always change.
Right.
We're committed to that. Where do I think housing values are going to go? We think it's going to level off here, and there's going to be a bit of a lull. I don't know if it's 6 months, 12, 24, but our position is there's going to be a lull for a period of time, and then once that's completed, we think the market's going to roar back, and we actually think coupons will come down and get us back to a point in time where there's a little more consistency in the markets. The turmoil that people talk about, or the volatility, it comes into a little more of a subsiding. But I do believe you'll see some of the smaller competitors of Anchor go away. And at the same time, I think the real estate developer, the real estate investor, the clients that we work with that are new to this sector, that are going to be challenged in a market like this without having a lot of experience, will go away too, which will scream opportunity for the senior tenure developers in this space, because oftentimes they'll find a rusty, dusty, crusty home they want to bid on that's for sale, and they'll see multiple offers pushing the price up. And oftentimes those are the individuals that are relatively new to the sector that thought they would put their toe in the water and do a little bit of this origination. But for those that go back to their other jobs because the market gets too difficult, we'll just scream opportunity for the senior tenured long-term real estate developer.
Right. The professionals, and a lot of those guys have seen these cycles happen before, so they know how to adjust. I tell most of the guys I talk to, we have some form of this conversation, and it's like, I think this is the best thing that could ever happen. I've been kind of screaming for 5-7 years, whatever it's been. This up and to the right continuously year after year is not a good thing. It just means that that we're kind of setting ourselves up for some form of correction. But when things do soften up a bit, I think you're right. The experienced guys have the wherewithal and the way to navigate through it, and the smaller, the newer, whether it's fix and flipper or spec builders, it takes one rough deal and they're kind of out of the business.
Yeah, and it's hard, because I always joke, I've lived my math on my piece of paper, I've lived my 36 years in this industry in 90-day increments. And even when things were booming, I'd still be squeaking when I walk. I was so uptight. And just because I knew the more boom there was sooner the bust was going to happen. But we have to take a step back and look at some of the fundamentals in the housing sector. Number one, the home builders, when they see a recession, they stop building. They sit on their dirt. Why? Because you can't reproduce dirt, but the last thing I do is build a home into an abyss. And so they'll sit on the dirt and stare at it for as long as they have to, which doesn't help the supply issue in meeting our demand issue. Okay, so we check that box. If that's the case, then the fix and flip and the infill construction and the rental business just screams for opportunity to our clients. We're seeing this, to get new inventory, if you can't build it, you kind of have to recycle it. Right. Oftentimes when people sell their home, that produces a home for sale for supply. But we're seeing that usually that's a function of the world's greatest generation, the people that are retired. And they're aging in place now, where it used to be you'd sell your home and you move to a retirement community, or you'd sell your home and you'd go to Florida. Nothing against Florida, but that's what people in the Northeast and the Midwest do. They sell their house and go to Florida. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a situation now where people are aging in place and they're staying in their home. In addition to that, you have people that have owned their home for a while. They either purchased or refied into the lowest rate environment we've seen in forever. And they have big equity in their houses. So why am I going to sell my house, pay tax on that, move to a new house at a higher interest rate, it just doesn't make sense. So we're seeing people also staying put, and instead of moving to a bigger home, just adding on more square footage, whether it's a second story or additional room on their house. So that's also happening. And then, of course, we're seeing this aspect of continued demand for housing, because the American dream still exists, and even with the higher interest rates that have come through, homes are still out there for purchase, but it's just all pushes where if there isn't a would-be buyer, we're seeing these institutional landlords all coming into play that are taking hold and being that nationwide landlord, and that also kind of helps kind of suck up that supply, which once again feeds the fundamentals of the sector, which would be helpful once we get to the other side of what I'll call this lull.
Yeah, no, it's great point, and all good, good things to think about from an investment perspective, or, from our client perspective. It's like the supply issue is not going away anytime soon. Well, Andy, I think we can close it out. I appreciate the time. I think all really good stuff. I don't know if you want to leave with a message to our clients and prospects, but this was really good.
Yeah, no, it's thanks, Rod. I mean, great opportunity to be able to participate in your podcast and to interface through this podcast with your constituents, your followers. We remain bullish on the environment, and no doubt about it. With this movement, there is a aspect of having to pivot our businesses. Oftentimes, as you mentioned, it's nice when everything goes to the upper right-hand corner, but oftentimes it's a bit of a zigzagged line, and every time there's a zig, there's corrective action, and it zags, and then you pivot again, and it zigs again. And so, through that process, that's what we do. As organizations, we have to be prepared to change our business model for those markets and adjust accordingly. And we're seeing that happen. As you mentioned, what type of advice do we do as far as trying to make sure that we're everlasting? We raise coupons, we tighten the credit window, we lower leverage. At the same time, to slow it down for ourselves, we're seeing a lot of our clients, I'll use the term, self-administrate, self-regulate, self-opt-in, and self-opt-out, knowing themselves, given their knowledge of the marketplace, when they see things that might be toppy. At the same time, our clients are there. The astute people out there know when there's a home run, they're not going to let it slip through their fingers. And by all means, we want to be there to help finance and fund and support them in their efforts for procuring those home runs and providing them the financing to get their deals done.
Exactly. Great. Thanks, Andy.
All right, Bob. Be good. Be safe. Thank you.
You too.